how do we utilize artificial intelligence, right, to help people rather than replace people? And that's where the minimeAI came way about, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create agents that are useful for you. Think of them as servants, or think of them as experts that that behave like you with your own data, but can extend a branch of expertise or data in things that you were never thought of. So, for example, you can have agents that does certain functions for you, that helps you with your job, or with your personal life, or with this and that. So yeah, so for mini-me, the name mini-me is literally, it's a miniature version of you created using AI technology, and then we're going to use decentralized blockchain technology to actually incentivize data collection, curating good quality data, as well as an identity piece. And we're going to create a marketplace for essentially for businesses, individuals, consumers, and allowing them to buy, purchase, curate, and create their own digital agent or digital twin. So that's where that came from.
Very cool. I'm like slightly afraid to ever meet my digital twin, but that's maybe a little bit more about my personality than I should share. Anyway, so if the question was, what got me into the space, or like what really motivates me or us, I think aside from just like a personal curiosity to where this stuff goes, from an organizational perspective, like we have a few beliefs, if you will, about the intersection of crypto and AI. And why that is important. I think one of them is that there needs to be a censorship-resistant option for AI. I think we'll pretty quickly head into a world in which different organizations, whether those organizations are companies or countries, will have their own AI stack. They'll have like the country-sanctioned LLM that tells you the country-sanctioned version of the truth, or like the way that they want to frame certain things. And maybe that's fine if the government is pretty benevolent, but maybe it's not fine if the government's not. And so we, like in the same way that Bitcoin serves as this like non-governmental code is law currency, I think it'll be necessary for there to be a non-governmental, independent, preferably open source AI world. And for us, we're trying to figure out like, and sort of coordinate that system, I think you need the economic incentives to be in place. I think token incentives will be a very powerful way to do that, and we really want Solana to be the layer that is facilitating a lot of that action. So that's one of the core theses here for us at the intersection of crypto and AI, is like, how do we make sure that there is a uncensorable, open AI stack? Now, whether that stack is as good as the closed versions remains to be seen, but like there should be some option. The other thing that we're pretty excited about is token incentives as a way to address or accelerate some of the bottlenecks that we'd expect in the sort of growth of AI. One example of this would be something like data collection that was mentioned earlier. Insofar as you believe that good, interesting, curated data is going to be a limiting factor for how good these models get, I think token incentives is going to be a very good way to get a bunch of people to engage in certain behaviors and get certain things. So there's specific areas in which we see token incentives being pretty powerful, and I think Solana is going to be a very good ecosystem to facilitate a lot of that.
I think what's important for us in the context of artificial intelligence is to introduce multiple aspects. One aspect really is data ownership. So the ability to have the data be encrypted, and have the ability as the data owner, the data source, to have economic incentives to utilize this data, and to utilize this data collaboratively with others to train models. I think that's highly important. And another element really is responsibility. So generating responsible AI models. I think there is an increased tangibility for all of us with the advent of large language models, how significant privacy breaches can be if all inferences that we've ever asked from these models get leaked, for example, or if Apple Intelligence is able to train their models on all of our chat messages. So I think responsibility on the side of the creation of models, but also on the side of the inference into those models is highly important, and we require trustless technology for this, and we're building this technology now. What's important is that the technology has to be trustless, but at the same time the technology has to be efficient, because that's really this big struggle that with all privacy technology we're always facing, that we cannot require user and application developers to have to go out of their way and create worse user experience just to provide privacy and data protection. In those cases, those products will be viewed as inferior products, and so for us it's important to optimize for both trustlessness and efficiency. And that's why we are developing the kind of technology that we're developing, both on the cryptographic side of things, but also Arcium is utilizing as consensus and state layer Solana, for example, right? And so for us, both on the cryptographic side of things, it's important to have this efficiency, but on the economic level, on the settlement level, on the state management level, on Solana, we also require this efficiency. So yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone talks about like the balance of efficiency and also the ethical concerns that we mentioned earlier, like the data ownership and data privacy and all those things. So when talking about like AI and blockchain, most of the people think that this combination is not that organic. So for example, AI could be like trained like, for example, centralizedly and have like really good like performance. Like instead of like you're utilizing maybe a decentralized GPU network and all this. So I was wondering like how do you guys think of the balance? How do you balance the performance and like trustless, these two sectors in your project? Yeah, I think Yannik is like choosing the MPC like out of other like privacy tech like for this, and I think there might be like some reason that you can let that.
Yeah, so there's essentially a set of technologies one could utilize in order to provide privacy. I think you might disagree with me on that, but I'm fully convinced that the legacy sort of approach would be trusted execution. So trusting some manufacturer or some third party to execute something for you, utilizing, for example, trusted execution environments would be one approach. The problem with trusted execution environments really boils down to a fundamentally flawed trust model. And this trust model requires one that utilizes chips, for example, produced by Intel SGX, so dedicated hardware chips that come with privacy and security guarantees, that you have to trust a proprietary closed supply chain consisting of just linear chain of single points of failure. And we've seen those chains fail all over the place, and I haven't come across any trusted execution environment technology that lived for more than 5 to 10 years. So for us, we really wanted to find technology that can provide the efficiency that dedicated trusted hardware can provide, while at the same time being more trustless. The most cryptographically secure technology to choose would be fully homomorphic encryption. Fully homomorphic encryption, however, is has this enormous practical limitation. So fully homomorphic encryption allows for the operation over encrypted state without having to decrypt that state. However, it comes with the significant practical limitation of having a latency penalty of many orders of magnitude above normal execution times. So what that means, if we at Arcium, for example, compare the technology that we are building with fully homomorphic encryption, is what we usually see is a slowdown of 30,000 to 70,000 times. We are able to be so much faster than fully homomorphic encryption because we also utilize homomorphic encryption, but only a subset of those operations. And at the end of the day, what we are doing is by using MPC, multi-party computation, there's a set of nodes that collaboratively run a secret computation, and all boils down to those nodes taking secret values and splitting them into shares to those values, distributing them, and then running computations and recombining the resulting shares again. And this technology is highly efficient, and we're able to make this technology trustless by our protocol coming with the dishonest majority trust assumption. So we can have an arbitrarily large-sized set of nodes that run such a computation within our network, and we only require one node within such a cluster to behave honestly, to not be maliciously collaborating with all of the others. So I think that's an amazing trust assumption, and in a system that requires trust, having to trust that there's 1 out of n that behaves accordingly is the lowest possible trust assumption. So that combined with those cryptographic techniques allows us to be so efficient and trustless at the same time. So that's why at the current point in time this technology makes so much sense.
I'll add one thing, which is not to do with the technology around privacy itself, because I think Yannick's much more informed on that. I would make a comment more around like, who even cares about privacy? This is actually a debate that the two of us have had before. I will make the claim that most people in this room right now will be perfectly happy to give up most of the data if the service they get back in return is A, free, and B, good. Like, this is already the trade that we make when we use Gmail or use Google or use Instagram or use, like, pick your social media network. You get an awesome experience, it's free, and in return you give a bunch of data. Yeah, sometimes you complain about it and it feels a little weird when Google's targeted ads are like a little too good, but generally speaking, I think people are pretty happy with that trade, and I think it's the right trade to make. I think with L1s, I think it's probably will still be true. Now, I think there's some, and so I guess my point there is like, there's a whole set of use cases in AI in which actually I think privacy is pretty overrated. There's some specific use cases in which privacy matters a lot. Enterprises, especially like banks and financial institutions that have like legally binding privacy regulation, they will have to use some of this technology. And there's some other cases like in healthcare where privacy will matter. But I think it's just maybe worth thinking about at the very top level, like, do you even need to go through the pain of privacy? And for a lot of these AI crypto applications, my answer is, especially for a lot of consumer ones, no.
Thank you. Speaking of banks, I used to work for investment banks. Wall Street, did that for 9 years. Yeah, and then I got really bored and I decided to come to the crypto and blockchain and AI world. But on the topic of privacy, what I'll talk about data privacy and data privacy of the consumer. And I think why is that important to AI and as we go forward, right? So number one, right, I think you should own your own data. Okay. So you as a consumer, right, whether you're browsing the web, you're putting your information, you're interacting, you're engaging with either social media or in the next wave of social media, they're going to be AI agents. You're going to be talking and interacting and having dialogues with agents all over the world, because that's going to happen. And there's going to be a break point at one point where there's going to be more agents in the entire world than humans. There's 8 billion humans in the populace of the entire world, right? And we're going to have multiple volumes of agents that are going to be interacting with real humans. And now, where does privacy matter? Well, number one is if you are giving your data to collected by an agent, which are going to be used in some sort of way as advertisement or utilized to train a model, right? You should be compensated for it, okay? And that's the philosophy that we in minimeAI is trying to build, right? We're creating an incentivized system where every agent or every digital twin that's interacting with a real human and they're collecting data through the dialogue and interaction, right? That individual, that human, owns his own data. He or she has the right to choose of whether to disclose the data, whether to make his data private, or whether or not to be compensated based on the quality of this data. So those considerations, those dimensions are all being carefully considered as we build our AI agent. So, and then blockchain, right? Blockchain is is a tool, right, and has a great mechanism to store that data and have a privacy aspect protecting it. So, and those are the things that we're looking at when we're talking about AI and blockchain. So.
Okay, thank you for the answers. So I think the next question will be more about the growth, because we all know there are a lot of networks in the blockchain AI space. So basically, this network asks you to contribute your data, and another network also asks you to contribute another set of data. So with all this infra in place, and so they're literally targeting the same amount of users sometimes, and same amount of liquidities as well. So I was wondering, this is a question for Yannik and Kuleen. So how do you basically, enable real use cases on top of the infra, and how do you grow your AI system from ground up?
Yeah, this is actually a tricky question to answer, and it's not clear to me that the intersection of AI and crypto today is quite mature enough for us to have a really good answer to this. I think actually I'm more bullish on some of the consumer-facing applications at the intersection of AI and crypto than I am at a lot of the infrastructure. Not all the infrastructure, but a lot of it. I think a lot of the infrastructure, if we count things like many of the decentralized GPU networks, I think most of these things are going to fail, but the service is just not good enough for a whole bunch of reasons we can get into. I think some of the privacy work actually is one of the few use cases that actually has some long-standing value. So anyways, I guess my sort of maybe slightly controversial take is most of the AI infrastructure that sort of exists today, I think, is various shades of vaporware that will hopefully change over time. But I think that there are some types of consumer crypto applications that actually could be very powerful with a token as part of the engagement or economic loop in the application. Let me give you one example just to make this a little bit real. Some of you maybe are familiar with some of these apps in which you take a screenshot of your food, and then the sort of app runs a image model, and it tells you, hey, here's what is in the food, and here's the macronutrient breakdown of the food. So this many calories, this much protein, this much fat. And then sometimes the model's wrong, and then you correct it. You say, no, this wasn't a blackberry, this is a blueberry, right? Now, there's a few of these applications. My personal belief is that one of them should launch a token. In the same way that I got tokens for walking around when I was using STEPN back in sort of the glory days of STEPN, why shouldn't I get a token when I give valuable feedback to a sort of machine learning food scanning app? And the first application that launched the token that incentivizes users will see a huge surge in people. A bunch of people will be using the thing, they'll be scanning it, it'll be a whole thing. You can have a referencing system. You can do all this stuff. Now, you have to do a lot of work to make sure that people don't game it, so that's a ton of work, you've got to figure it out. But if you can do that well, I actually think that there's certain behaviors in these consumer crypto applications that a token could really make it quite exciting. So anyways, I guess the long answer here is, or the short answer here is specific consumer behaviors of a token in these AI applications, I think is super good. A lot of the infrastructure, overrated.
So I think going back to your previous point about privacy, I think there's this recognition even in the traditional AI space that there's important value lying in protecting this privacy. I think we've seen that with Apple building their dedicated artificial intelligence trusted execution environments and their private cloud compute in order to sort of guarantee or rather convince the users of privacy being protected with these kinds of systems. And so if someone wants to provide inference or training in an open, distributed, permissionless setting, there's not even this privacy guarantee of some company privately running a server. So I think that's one significant reason why we require privacy. At the same time, I agree with you that privacy cannot require the users or companies that provide privacy to have to build a worse product, to have to go out of their way. I think that's one prerequisite in order to have adoption of privacy. Now, regarding the adoption of the technology, I think what's important, and that is not only important for crypto AI projects, but for crypto projects and AI projects for every startup, I think that there has to be real value associated. And in the context of crypto and AI, that means not artificially combining these kinds of technologies. And I think there's many places where we've seen artificial combination of those technologies. I think what's interesting about what we're building with Arcium is that we're really only using blockchain because combining blockchain with those theoretical papers adds new properties. And I think the most significant property would be censorship resistance that otherwise could never be provided in full trustlessness. Because running these kind of multi-party computations in a trusted setting never allows the actual distribution and decentralization that those protocols require for being trustless. At the same time, employing these protocols just naively in a peer-to-peer network will not come with censorship resistance. And so by combining it with a distributed ledger, having staking and slashing mechanisms, and implementing new cryptographic protocols, we are able to guarantee execution, game theoretically at least. So I think these kind of properties are important for every project, that new properties can emerge from fusion of different technologies. And I think in the case of artificial intelligence, that means new valuable properties that are valuable enough need to be introduced. And I think for high sensitive data applications, that makes a lot of sense as we speak. For less sensitive data applications, it will take more time, more maturity in order to facilitate those as well in this distributed, more costly environment.
Yeah, for sure. Next question is actually for me, the digital twin project, because you're the only person here who are actually creating like a 2C product here. So I was wondering, like, I talked to a lot of AI investors, and they told me that the 2C AI agents is like very hard to GTM, and also it's very hard to generate revenue as well. Like the space is super like competitive, and like each AI agent, that there are not many differentiations between each other. So I was wondering, like in terms of the revenue generation and GTM part, what are your thoughts about this? And I was wondering if the introduction of the decentralized technology in your model is a part of that like revenue model or something.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm going to rephrase the question. So essentially, the AI space is so competitive, right? And the models are essentially open source. So how do you differentiate yourself? Right? That's the question we've been battling for years, and it's very true. Right? All the models are open source. So then, where is the proprietary technology that can actually, sustain a company's growth and scale it as we go? Right? So, and the answer to that lies in a couple of things. One, right, is that the curation of good quality data. So with our clients and we've landed some great clients that have communities of 6 to 10 million, right? So we can easily curate good data. But good data itself, right, is not just enough. The second piece is the actual technology, the algorithm that allows you to train an LLM that has a digital twin that essentially mimics you and with specific levels of expertise in subject matter, right? And part of that, what we're doing now, right, that's proprietary, is something called the goal-oriented dialogue, which is where instead of having LLMs, which essentially gives an answer, it doesn't have to be true, it can hallucinate. their job is to give a general, like OpenAI, their job is the GPT, their job is to give the best, most creative answer. There's no truth base, right? But with our proprietary design and technology, we can actually get the user to a specific goal. So the example I would give is if you're a doctor and you're just giving general advice versus a doctor who's actually leading you to the right questions to then make sure you're buying the right medicine, right? So, and that's the technology we're doing. And the other thing is hallucination. So how do we stop hallucination, right? The baseline model is everybody uses RAG, right? Retrieval augmented. But then what do we do on top of that that can minimize hallucination? And for those of you who don't know, hallucination is when the AI starts making things up that are not true. And what we do is we design a multi-agent system where we give each agent backed by an LLM specific tasks, right? And to have all these agents hallucinate at the same time, the probability is very, very low. So yeah, so to answer your question, right, our revenue piece, right, is the proprietary in the design of our technology, plus the curation of good quality data, where then we can save our clients time, and time is money. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it pretty much answers my question. But I was wondering, like, for the digital twin part, actually, so for example, I'm creating my personalized AI, like assistant, right? But it does not like have, how to say, professional value to the person that who are seeking like law advice or something like that. So I was wondering, is this more targeting on the, how to say, professional individual side, or it's more like a, how to say, companion that you can have?
It's both, actually. It's both. So what you have been seeing in the advancement of AI now is a lot of the AIs that have been targeting emotion, right? So there's AI companions, boyfriend, girlfriend, right, friend, right? And so yeah, to answer your question, is both. So when you have a digital twin that can mimic any human, any human emotion or human interactions, right? It draws the boundaries of, is this for recreation or is this for production, right? And so for many people, we do both. So the end goal for us is to create a marketplace where anybody can build their own agent and twin and have their own data, and they can sell it and buy it on an open marketplace. But to start, right, we're building agents specifically for for influencers, for people who need to just save time. But on top of that, we're also interested in building, allowing users the flexibility to build their own, right? Whether they want to build a friend or imaginary, someone they admire, right? One of their heroes that they can interact with, etc., etc. So it's both.
Got it. Yeah, I think we are like approaching the end of our panel discussion, so I have like a last question for all the panelists. So usually like the ending question would be like about how you envision the future of like blockchain AI, this kind of very boring question. So I would like to ask like, what other, how to say, most frequently encountered misconceptions about like the intersection of blockchain AI that you've heard or like you've interacted with, like by the general public?
Okay, I'll start.
And how do you how do you correct them like by that?
Sure. Well, I'll start first, but since this is the last question, I want to give a shout out to Solana. Solana is an amazing project. Every time I look at, we're building a layer 2, and we're just super impressed by the volume and the amount of traction on Solana. So kudos to you. But now to answer the question, right? So what is the misconception, right? So the common denominator between AI and blockchain, right, has been data, right? So when people just say, hey, data is what connects blockchain and AI, that is somewhat true, but you also want to think about functionality. What was it built for, right? So blockchain, right, when Satoshi wrote the white paper, right, it was built for peer-to-peer transactions, value transfer, which essentially in our world is currency and money. It's built for creating and allowing people to transfer value from one another, right? It's not just data. Data is a big component, but it's for money and transactions. And what is AI built for is used to, to me, is used to save time, right? To allow cognitive tasks, human tasks, to be done by a system. by artificial intelligence. Right? Before it was machine learning and linear regressions. Now they became deep learning came out, and then the transformer model